Every year with the NFL draft, you get those few guys that you know I'm man crushing on hardcore. Every year you get those few guys that I'm maybe bigger on than everybody else. And sometimes I'm validated, and sometimes I'm not. It just is what it is. I get those guys that I get hopped up on, and I can't get enough. I just want more. Like Johnny Manziel at an all-night bender. Just can't get enough. Got to get some more no matter what. Well, I'll tell you this much. Flat out from Jump Street. I'm probably higher on Karl Joseph than most anybody else that you will see throughout the entire NFL draft media, throughout this entire NFL draft cycle. When I pop on the film and I sit back and watch Karl Joseph, it's like a flashback. It's like watching the way I feel football should be played, the way it used to be when they had leather helmets and shit. This guy is a motherfucking bowling ball of machetes. He's just a beast. Beast! And if it wasn't for his unfortunate ACL injury that he suffered during the 2015 college football season, a lot more people would be talking about this dude, and we'd be talking about him as being one of the top prospects in this 2016 NFL draft class. Even with that injury, he still is. Don't be fooled. This dude is a stud. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Karl Joseph and why Jeffy's got a man crush on this dude. All right, so you talk about a kid, 5'10", 205 pounds, senior from West Virginia. Just does so many things well, has so many things that I really like out of a defensive back, in particular out of a safety. You're talking about a guy with quickness and speed. This guy is a really, really, really good athlete. Now, some people might disagree with me and say he doesn't have the hips to play corner. I disagree. I think he does have the hips to play corner, but ultimately he's a safety, and that's what he should be. This is a guy that is a really fluid, natural athlete to me with good initial quickness, great speed, in particular great closing burst and closing speed when he recognizes a play and he's going to make the stop. And when he gets there, he brings it. He plays with a physicality that reminds me a lot of Bob Sanders, being all of 5'10", 205 pounds. The dude attacks the ball carrier, attacks the receiver like he's a 260-pound middle linebacker. He's a beast in run support, and in terms of his tackling, he's one of the best tacklers in the entire 2016 NFL draft, in particular because of his ability to both make the fundamental solid safe tackle and to make that big-time impact explosive hit. I mean, this dude is a fucking bowling ball of machetes with chainsaw blades attached to him, with flaming thumbtacks and everything. Just incredible shit. It's like a non-stop fucking spot fest of awesome when it comes to his physicality and the way he approaches it and the way he plays the game. But when you look at his ability to make the tackles, make the fundamental solid tackles, make the big-time hits, those explosive kind of splash wow plays, those mo-changing plays, the momentum-changing plays, I mean, he's got it in great abundance. You know, I look at him too, though. He's got a good mind for the game. I see a guy who has a very, very good awareness, really good play recognition and instincts as well. That seems to be a natural fit to play free safety at the NFL level. Another thing I really like about his game in terms of his athleticism, this is where it comes into play. He can turn and locate the ball. He's got really, really good ball skills. I won't say he has the best ball skills out of this safety class this year. Maybe Darian Thompson and Von Bell are a little bit better. Darian Thompson for sure, maybe Von Bell, maybe not. But Karl Joseph, if he's not equivalent to at least Von Bell in terms of ball skills out of the safety class, he's very, very, very close. He's got more than enough ball skills to go and make the play, to knock down the pass, to intercept some passes too. I love his versatility and the way he was utilized at West Virginia in terms of he was in the slot. They were lining him up as eighth man in the box. They were bringing him as a blitzer. He'd play some man. He played some zone. So he's got experience in working all different types of coverages. Just can't say enough about this dude. The games that I saw, the games that I watched, phenomenal stuff. Just absolutely phenomenal. Clearly, to me, looked like a first-round graded player on film. In a draft that doesn't have 31 players that carry and merit first-round grades, he is one of those, as I've talked about before, those 16, 17, 18 for sure guys that are real first-round talents regardless of the draft. Now, he's not perfect, and I do have to, in the interest of fairness, talk about some of the question marks. I still have some question marks too. You know, those things that maybe give me pause for making him maybe a top 5 player in this draft. That put him maybe more in the 10 to 15 range potentially, right around there. Size, you're talking about 5'10", 205 pounds. You know, he's not a monstrous dude. I mean, he carries his weight well. He's bigger than you think. But it could lead to some concerns about durability, similar to what it did with the Bob Sanders back for the Indianapolis Colts. He was great when he was on the field, but was he going to be able to stay on the field consistently? And most certainly the ACL injury isn't going to help ease any of those fears or suspicions that he might not hold up physically on a consistent basis at the NFL level. In terms of his actual play, sometimes I think he can be such a bowling ball of machetes that he could be so focused on trying to go make every single play and try to make every play matter and every play a big play that he could take less than desirable pursuit angles. Now, at the college level, he was able to get by on that with his quickness, speed, and athleticism and make some tackles that, frankly, at the NFL level, he might not make, in part because he was so aggressive in trying to go after dude. He was so aggressive in trying to make the play, that sometimes he has to learn how to back off just a little bit. Not every play is going to require that big, massive hit. And in general, his over-aggressiveness, while I love the competitiveness and I love the fire in the belly and I love the approach and the way he plays and how aggressive he is as a run defender, as a blitzer, and pass coverage, in zone and in man-to-man, there's always going to be that tendency because of that over-aggressiveness that he could get burned occasionally. He could get faked out of his shoes in run support. He could sit there and get susceptible to a double move in the passing game. He might be a guy that might wander away from his responsibility in zone a little bit because he's so eager to go make the play that he could end up really hurting his defense deep down the field. So it's something he's going to have to watch out, playing with a little bit more controlled rage and controlled fury, because when you get that controlled rage and that controlled fury, that's when you have a truly dangerous player, because they ultimately play under control. And for as much as I love Karl Joseph on film, every once in a while he can get a little OC. He can get a little out of control. I have some concerns too, just in terms of his transition to playing free safety at the NFL level, in part because he didn't play deep a lot. He didn't play a lot of 1 deep, 3 deep, 2 deep zone. He tended to stay a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, which kind of gives me the other question is he going to play free safety or strong safety at the NFL level? I think he can play either, and I don't think there's much of a drop-off to either. And I think certain skills will fit for free safety that he has, certain skills will fit for strong safety that he has. He's kind of one of those interchangeable safeties, but there will be some teams that will have questions about, is he really big enough to play strong safety? Is he really athletic enough and fluid enough in coverage to play free safety? Does he have enough experience and discipline to be able to play as a center fielder? That's a legit question, as is his recovery from this ACL injury. While an ACL injury might not be as big of a deal as it once was, it's still an ACL injury. He still tore up his knee. It's going to be very important. The medical's on him, and it's going to be very important that his recovery goes well, because he's already going to have 1 strike against him when it comes to a knee injury. So some teams may have a little bit of a pause investing a really high pick in a guy who they assume already has a bum knee. Now, in terms of NFL comparisons, you've heard me mention Bob Sanders a couple of times. And, from a strong safety kind of standpoint, he reminds me of Bob Sanders. From a free safety standpoint, it'd maybe be Earl Thomas with quickness and speed and great football intelligence and ball skills, a guy that could come up and lay some wood on somebody and run support. So I see a combination kind of those two guys. If he played strong safety, maybe more like Bob Sanders. If he played free safety, he'd be like Earl Thomas. Those are the two guys that he really reminds me of quite a bit. And, I don't throw around those comparisons lightly, because those are two really, really good football players. Sanders during his time and Earl Thomas now, most certainly. And that's what I think the upside and the potential is. Ask Peyton Manning how important Bob Sanders was. He doesn't win that first Super Bowl for Indy in 2006 if Bob Sanders isn't there. You look at the Seahawks. When Pete Carroll, John Schneider took over, who did they bring in that really helped change the tone for that entire team? It was Earl Thomas. Remember, people bitched at him and complained about him because they didn't take Taylor Mays? Ooh, you know what I mean? Well, I look at Karl Joseph, I say, I know he's coming off of a knee injury, and that's always going to give people a reason for pause and concern. And I understand that, and I get that. But if he attacks his rehab the same way he attacks his play on the football field, I have no doubts that he's going to come back from that knee injury as good as he ever was, maybe even bigger, stronger, and faster the way this son of a bitch is. I mean, I love so many things about his game. I think when it comes to him, he's a safety, free safety, strong safety, doesn't matter. He's just a fucking safety. And if you're an NFL team and you don't think that this guy could be a high-level safety at the top level, then you're a moron. I'm sorry. That's just the way I see it with this dude. Too athletic, too physical, too strong for his size, too aggressive to think that he would be anything other than an impact player and a stud. I mean, you look at him, Karl Joseph is an impact player. And he's the type of guy, to me, that will give opposing offenses a pause of going over the middle of the field, in particular running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers. They might not want to get anywhere in his ballpark. Now, he could get into some trouble occasionally with some of the hits he might put on somebody because he could be a little over-aggressive. He might lead with his helmet. Could draw some unnecessary flags, some fines. That could be a problem, too, similar to like a Brandon Merriweather. But the bottom line is this dude is a stud. The differences between Jalen Ramsey and Karl Joseph as to why Karl Joseph isn't my #1 rated safety as opposed to Jalen Ramsey are simply the following. I think Jalen Ramsey is a little bit more superior as an athlete. He's got a little bit of better size on his frame. And I think his man cover skills are better, and he doesn't have the ACL injury. It really, though, isn't that much of a difference. And I want to emphasize this again. Jalen Ramsey may be the top player in the 2016 NFL Draft, but in terms of safety position play, Jalen Ramsey might be here. Karl Joseph is nipping on his heels. And I actually wouldn't be all that surprised if Karl Joseph at the NFL level was everything that Jalen Ramsey was, if not potentially more. For all the talk about how special Jalen Ramsey is, and I agree, he is, I think Karl Joseph is almost just as special. For my money, like I said, he's a top 10 to 15 talent in this draft, and I actually think he's a top 10 talent in this draft. And when I put together my big board, you're probably going to see that reflected there. I'd be stunned if he wasn't the second safety drafted, even with coming off of that ACL injury. Maybe somebody will fall in love with Keanu Neal and his physicality and run support, but he's a strong safety that's a bit limited as an athlete. Maybe they'll like a Darian Thompson, but Karl Joseph could do so many more things. Yes, he's coming off the knee injury, but Christ almighty, trust your eyes. Your eyes tell you this dude is going to be a stud. And I'd be stunned if somebody wasn't smart enough out of those 31 teams picking in the first round, somewhere along the way, somebody picked him. It probably would be towards the end of round 1. I tell you, a team that would make a tremendous amount of sense for him, and he would make a tremendous amount of sense for them, is the Carolina Panthers. You would be in a position, if you're the Carolina Panthers, to gamble on an impact player in that secondary like that. You pair him at safety with Josh Norman at corner for the next several years, and watch out now. That good Carolina Panthers defense, that great Carolina Panthers defense is going to get even better. Imagine that freaking beast on the back end of that defense. Just again, when I think of this dude, I think of a bowling ball of fucking machetes. He is beyond question one of my favorite players that I have scouted for this entire 2016 NFL draft class, and I don't expect that to change. And to me, if I'm in charge of a team, I'm looking at him, and I've got to have a top 10 grade on him. I really mean that, because this dude could do that many things, and he could have that much of an impact on the game at the NFL level. And if he can stay healthy and not have consistent knee injuries and other problems, I think he's going to validate me, and in 2 or 3 years, we're going to be looking at this and talking about how I was a genius, similar to how I was Aaron Donald. I'm almost on that level with Karl Joseph, if that lets you know what I think about this dude. Dude's a stud, and if your team ends up taking him in round 1, be thankful that you did.